I hope that everyone had a fulfilling and rewarding Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the new year is off to a good and sweet start, and it should only get better and sweeter from here on for everybody. We're going to talk about Sukkos. We see something very interesting about Sukkos, right? All the Yomim Tovim that we have, a Yom Tov, Yom Tov, good day. Yomim Tovim are all a celebration of something. They're a commemoration of something. And if we look at the Yomim Tovim, what we say in davening, we have Yom HaZikaron, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Teruah, all the things that are about Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur is Yom HaKippurim. Pesach, Zman Cherosenu. Shavuos, Zman Matan Torasenu. So each of these Yomim Tovim is a time when we're celebrating something, and in the davening we describe what it is that we're celebrating, what it is that we're commemorating. You have a look at Sukkos. What do we say in davening? Zman Simchasenu. The time of our rejoicing, the time of our happiness, time of our joy, time of our celebration. There's no reference to something that we're celebrating. It just seems like there's this generic, it's a time of joy, of happiness. Joy about what? Happiness about what? Celebrating what? We don't have any indication as to what it is that we're happy about, what it is that we are celebrating, what it is that's supposed to be making us joyous, that we're rejoicing and commemorating. We see something similar that in halachic conversation, in Gemara, etc., when there is discussion about Yomim Tovim, we have, generally, we'll have Chag HaPesach, Chag Shavuos. Whenever you see the word Chag, right, you would say Chag Stam, it just says Chag, holiday, festival, without any indication of which of the Chagim it is. It just says Chag, just Chag, generic. Chag refers to Sukkos. So here we have another example of the same thing. When it's Chag, a celebration, but there's no indication of what it is that we're celebrating, that's Sukkos. Sukkos is that time when we're just happy, and we don't seem to know about what. We're rejoicing, but we don't know what it is that we're rejoicing about. Or we don't have certainly seem to have any explicit description of what it is that we're rejoicing about. And the message, or one of the messages that we get from this, and we're going to discuss what it is and how and why, is, I think it's fair to say, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, one of the most important lessons, perhaps in life, period. One of the most important lessons in terms of quality of life and joy and happiness. And that lies in the fact that Sukkot specifically is just called Chag, celebration, Zman Simchasenu, the time of our joy, without a description of a particular thing that we're commemorating and rejoicing. Now, that's not to take away from the fact that yes, there are things that we are commemorating, etc., but there's a very clear implicit statement here that this is just a generic rejoicing, or an unspecified, generic's the wrong word, an unspecified or undefined joy, celebration, happiness. When it comes to happiness, the pursuit of happiness is one of the most lucrative things that you can monetize if you can convince people that your book or online course or substance that you have to offer, whatever it is, if you can convince people that you have the key to happiness, overnight billionaire. Everybody wants to be happy, and today everybody's looking to be happy, right? What's the secret to happiness in life, to feeling, to being happy? And probably effectively countless books about it, and online courses and all of these things, and lots of people are making lots of money, and the people who are purchasing those products are by and large mostly, I would say, if not just about all, if not all completely, not going where they hoped they were going to go by means of getting this product. And that's because the pursuit of happiness, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to elaborate and explain. The pursuit of happiness is self-defeating by definition. I'm going to write that down. And what that means is, there should be one more word in there actually, is necessarily self-defeating. Necessarily, that'll do. The pursuit of happiness is necessarily self-defeating by definition. What that means is that when one is pursuing happiness, when one is trying to figure out how to become happy, that will necessarily, by definition, get in the way of them being happy. And we will discuss why. There's something similar to this that we see actually in Maimar Chazal, right? Chazal say, Kol harodef afar, the other way around, Kol haberech min hakavod, anyone who runs away from kavod. It's not really a Maimar Chazal, it's this sort of butchered job of a few half Maimar Chazal put together, but it is something that Chazal say, if not exactly in this form, in one place. One who runs away from kavod, from honor, from respect, honor and respect will chase after them, with the proviso that if you run away and you look over your shoulder just to make sure that it is following you, it's not going to work. And then it says, one who chases after kavod, one who chases after honor and respect, the honor and respect will run away from them. Now there are two parts to this. One part of this is there is sort of a reward and punishment dynamic, that Hashem designed things in a way that when one is not looking for respect and honor, but focusing on the right things, Hashem set things up in a way that it's natural that that will be rewarded with one actually earning honor and respect. And the reverse is also true, that one who gets busy chasing honor and respect, and that's what they prioritize and they focus on, the honor and the respect will run away from them because they're not earning it. Another layer here is that there's an expression that you'll see sometimes, the Gemara might be having a conversation and the Tana and Amora, someone says something, you should do this, you have to do this, and everyone's all like, where does it say that? Based on what? We never saw that anywhere in a Mishnah. We never saw that anywhere in a Pasuk. Like, where do you get that from? And then the Gemara sometimes will respond and say, Eitza Tova Kamashmalan. Eitza Tova. He was giving you good advice. He wasn't telling you a halach. He wasn't telling you a minhag. He was giving you some good advice, practical advice. A person could say, you should really do this. You should really do A, B, and C. Could be telling you that this is a hidra mitzvah, this is a halacha, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you should do. It also could be good advice, by the way, you should really do this because then you're going to get this and this outcome which you would like. So sometimes the Gemara will say, Eitza Tova Kamashmal, and Chazal here are giving you advice. It's not an obligation, it's not a minhag, it's not anything you're supposed to do per se, but it's a good idea. And in a sense, that's the similar thing also, or one of the layers here, when Chazal tell us that when one runs away from respect and honor, it will chase after them. Think about in your life, the person, the people that you look up to the most, that you respect the most. What kind of person are they? In general, the people that we look up to, the people that we respect and honor, are people who are genuine and authentic, people who are committed, people who practice what they preach, but it's not really about practicing what they preach, even more deeply, people who live what they preach. And that's because they're not really preaching, they're just expressing the truth. People who are consistent, people, and most importantly, people who are committed and dedicated to the truth as they know it. When people know what's true and they're committed and dedicated to it, they're committed and dedicated to the truth and to that which is bigger than themselves, that naturally makes us feel respect for someone. So I'm just going to finish the thought, I'll take your question. So Chazal tell us, Kol habereach min hakavod, someone who's not interested in honor and respect, their focus is on what needs to be done, what's the right thing, and what do I need to do, what can I do to help move things towards where they need to be, to do what is the right thing for me to do right now. When someone's focused on those things, they're not chasing honor and respect, they're just chasing doing the right thing, honor and respect will chase after them, because that's naturally what makes us feel respect towards someone, is someone who's genuine and dedicated and committed and real and lives what they know to be true. And so then the second half of that, which is also just Eitzah Tova Kamash Malad, it's practical, really common sense. If someone is chasing after honor and respect, the honor and respect are going to run away from them faster than they can imagine. Right? When you encounter someone who is officially, who's maybe preaching something and sometimes it's very clear, sometimes it's a little more subtle, but you pick up on the fact that honestly this person is just completely into themselves and all they're doing here is trying to make a name for themselves, to brand themselves, to get honor and respect. And we can smell that from a country mile away. And when you see someone, and that's the sense that you get, that they're really just looking to make a name for themselves and to earn honor and respect are the last thing you're going to feel towards that person, right? Someone who pursues kavod, the kavod's going to run away from them, because not just necessarily because it's a punishment, because that's the way it works. The way that honor and respect work is people naturally feel respect for someone and will honor someone when they see commitment, dedication, truth, authenticity in that person. And so Chazal are just telling us very simply, the pursuit of honor, the pursuit of respect is necessarily self-defeating by definition. Because the thing that earns one respect is the diametric opposite of the pursuit of respect. What earns respect? What causes respect? Commitment and dedication to the truth, to the cause, to the bigger picture. And there's many, many, many variations of that. But that's the general idea. That is what generates a sense of respect. That is what causes, creates, earns respect. And pursuing respect is the opposite of it. It's self-centered versus cause and purpose-centered. So someone who's pursuing respect, that respect's going to be running far away from them, just because the pursuit of respect is the opposite of what actually causes respect. It's almost just basic common sense. So the pursuit of respect and honor is necessarily self-defeating by definition. Question?
My question.
It's a good question. If I'm understanding your question correctly, are you asking what's the factor that determines whether you can pursue it directly or whether you can't, basically?
Yeah, that is essentially my question.
I don't know that there is a defining factor necessarily per se. It could be that, it's just the nature of the thing. Some things, the way it works, some things, the way that you earn them is complex and it's not by pursuing them directly, and some things are not like that. I don't know that there's a specific factor per se. Yeah, good question. I don't know. It could be that there's a discussion about it somewhere about, that there is a specific characteristic that's common to these things. I don't know. That being said, okay, so first let's come back to happiness. So the same way that this is true of respect, the same thing is true of happiness. What causes happiness, right? And this is going to tie back into what we talked about a week or two ago, whenever it was in the evening, we talked about dopamine and all these things. Happiness is something that, if we look at happiness, and happiness is the ultimate value, the most valuable phenomenon, let's say, in the world, right? From a personal quality of life perspective, right? In terms of the thing that will increase someone's quality of life more than anything else, or not even more than anything else, in a sense, it is the ultimate factor in quality of life, is happiness, right? If one thing happens to two people and it makes one of them happy and one of them sad, then for one of them it was good and for one of them it was bad. And no, that was not supposed to rhyme. So why was it good or bad? Because for one of them it did make them happy and for one of them it didn't. I don't care about the thing. What makes something valuable is the outcome that it produces. If it makes you feel more joy, if it makes you feel happier, then it's positive. If it makes someone feel less joy, makes them feel less happiness, then it's negative. And if it's the same thing doing those two things to two people, then it's good for one and bad for the other. If you have two different things and they both have the same outcome, they both make two different people happy or the same person happy, then they're both good. And if one produces double the amount of happiness, then it's double as good. Right? In terms of quality of life, ultimately happiness is a proxy for a few things, let's say, but keep it without getting too complicated, right? Because happiness then it's going to tie into fulfillment and all of those things. But let's say positive emotion. Let's write positive emotion more broadly, which will include happiness and joy if there's a difference, and fulfillment and satisfaction and all of these things, right? Positive emotion ultimately is the factor that determines quality of life. Any other factor, its contribution towards quality of life depends on its contribution towards positive emotion, let's say, right? Positive emotion, in a sense, is the ultimate reward. And, you know, in terms of education and discipline and teaching and these sort of things, right, people use the word consequences, right? A long time ago, you don't say punishment or reward, you say consequence. Right, and after about 3 times, consequence just becomes a synonym for punishment in a child's eyes if you say it's a consequence. Right, excellent. So that's exactly where I'm going is, right now a term that you'll maybe see used is natural consequence. Because if I say the rule is if you do A, then B is going to happen to you, yeah, it's a consequence. But it's not a natural consequence, it's effectively a punishment. But if these are the rules, then that punishment is a consequence because you earned the punishment. A natural consequence, and these are the consequences that are the most effective at teaching better behavior. A natural consequence is when you don't have to implement the consequence happens as a result as it's natural. For example, you know, and this is not a very nice example, but it's a real one and it works. And hopefully no one ever experiences it, but anyone who does will learn. Put hand in fire, experience pain. That's a natural consequence. The parent didn't say, well, if you put your hand in the fire, then I'm going to make... No, you don't have to make them experience pain. Fire on hand causes pain. Put hand in fire, experience pain, right? That's it's a natural consequence. And you'll see, excuse me, that a child will much sooner learn not to put their hand in the fire again after doing it once and burning themselves and experiencing pain, let's say. They're going to learn that lesson much faster than when a parent says, if you do this, then this is going to happen. And then the parent does it. And you know what? When's the last time that worked? Certainly in one time. Never. Right? Because a natural consequence, you see, oh, when I do this, that happens. Okay, do more of this. Do less of this. Right, for example, and this is not a very constructive natural consequence, but let's say, eat chocolate chip cookie, put chocolate chip cookie in mouth, chew and swallow, experience enjoyable sensation. Right, so the flavor and the experience of enjoying food is a natural consequence of eating that food. So the good taste of a particular food is a natural consequence of eating it. And so that's going to encourage a person to eat more of it, right? Why do you want to eat things that are going to taste good? Because you've learned that the natural consequence of eating the food is the enjoyment, the pleasure that you get from eating it, right? Natural consequences are very, very, very effective teachers. And they're not even really rewards or punishments per se, right? Pain is not a punishment for putting the hand in the fire. It's just the way it works. Technically. Now, if we zoom out and look at the purpose of pain and the fact that pain has a creator, right? Obviously, the reason that Hashem created pain in general, as a general rule, is to direct us away from things that are dangerous or bad for us, right? Because if a person leaves a hand in a fire, it's going to cause a lot of damage. So we have a sensation of pain that as soon as we feel that heat, we automatically take our hand away and it hurts to prevent damage from being caused. So that's the purpose of it. But ultimately, it's a natural consequence. And positive emotion in general is the same sort of thing. Positive emotion is a natural consequence, and I'm going to say this very broadly as a general rule. Positive emotion is the natural outcome. It's a natural consequence of doing the things that we're supposed to do, living the life that we're supposed to live, being focused on the things that we're supposed to be focused on, being dedicated to the things that we're supposed to be dedicated to.
Then why is that people can experience pleasure from?
So just to clarify, are you talking about, let's say, someone who lives a life that's maybe to them deeply meaningful and fulfilling, but has nothing to do with Torah and mitzvahs?
Yeah.
Right, you're not just talking about someone who's like eating junk food and whatever.
People that are eating junk food are not out every night.
Okay, good, excellent question. So let's build this out a little. Is positive emotion only for Yidden, only for Jews? No, obviously not, right? It's part of like every mammal, every living organism probably has some variation of it. Whatever, conscious organism. All people experience positive and negative emotion. Everybody has a role to play. Right, for example, let's say, right, there's a pasuk. The pasuk says, well, there are several pasukim. The pasuk says, Lo toyovra l'sheves yitzara. Right, Hashem created the world to be populated. Right, Hashem wants the world to be populated, number one. If the world's not populated, there's no Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, there's no Torah Mitzvahs, there's no nothing. So because Hashem wants the world to be populated, there are lots of profound rewards and positive emotions, etc., that are built into the things that are necessary to ensure that the world should continue to be populated. For example, the unparalleled, instinctive, natural love that a parent has towards their child. Right? Hashem wants the world to be populated. In order for the world to be populated, children need to be raised, they need to be protected. It takes an unimaginable amount of patience and effort and dedication, etc., and tolerance and all of these things to get a child from birth to being able to be independent as an adult. Right? Now, if Hashem wants children to make it through there's going to be something that's going to get parents to do that job. Hence love, for example, right? As well as nachas and the joy and all of these things that come along with it, right? So, and again, we're looking at this from a very, very technical perspective, and it's only part of the picture, obviously, but it is true, it is real, right? And Hashem, in order to have families, there have to be parents who come together, who marry in order to build a family. So Hashem created loneliness, etc. These sorts of things, right? Generally speaking, a kid is not naturally going to start, a child is not going to feel the kind of loneliness that's going to drive them to look for a spouse when they're 5 years old. Why? Because there's no reason why they should. As a person approaches that stage in life, or is in the stage in life when, now it makes sense that they should start to raise a family, all the emotions, positive and negative, that are associated to motivate a person to find a spouse and start to build a family are going to start to kick in. Why? Because Hashem wants the world to be populated, right? So all of these things are true. Hashem wants the world to be populated. Also, the pasuk says, Adam la'amal yolad, man is created to work, to toil, right? One of the greatest sources, and we talked about the neurotransmitters back when we had that talk in the evening a couple of weeks ago about phones. One of the greatest sources of serotonin, right? Serotonin is associated with happiness, is movement, is hard work. And there are tremendous data that indicate that many people who have clinical, let's say for example, clinical depression, and are taking medications to address that. And those medications generally, as a category, mostly are SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They're medications that increase the level of serotonin in the body. Increased serotonin generally causes increased positive emotion, increased happiness. So medications that increase serotonin increase happiness. Hence, people who are depressed, medications that elevate serotonin can be very helpful. There are a lot of data that indicate that people who are taking these medications and people who depend on them to be able to function, to be able to live safely, very often through starting a discipline of regular, consistent, vigorous exercise, can often reduce and even often not need to take their medications at all anymore as long as they're continuing the exercise. Now, obviously, I have to say the fine print. This is not medical advice, etc. Blah 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 blah. Dot 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 dot. But this is a real thing, right? For people who are taking these medications, and there are people who need them and depend on them, and they can be life-saving 100%. Some of those people, maybe all of them, could benefit a lot if someone would, take this approach and introduce regular vigorous exercise into their life, and they may find that they can reduce the dose or eliminate them, or at least get a lot more benefit out of them, right? And exercise doesn't come with all the side effects that the medications come with. So here we see again, Hashem wants us to work. Why? Exercise makes us fit. Exercise increases longevity. The harder we work, number one, the harder we work, the more we produce and the better off the world is. L'sheves Yitzhara, the world is more effectively populated when we work hard and produce. Number two, the harder we work physically, the healthier we are, the fitter we are, the greater our life expectancy is going to be. So there are things that are built into our biology to reward us as a positive natural consequence of working hard, of producing, of achieving, of growing, of just literal difficult physical activity regardless of the outcomes. Endorphins, serotonin, all of these things, right? Runner's high, the serotonin that a person, well that's endorphins, and then the serotonin a person gets from exercise. All of these things are there to encourage us to be active, because being active is a very important part of what we're here for. Right? So this idea of living life the way we're supposed to, just very biologically, right, is anybody who, I'm going to try not to get, too deep out in the weeds on tangents here, but any person who eats a proper, nutritious diet with lots of foods that they should be eating and minimal foods that they shouldn't be eating, and gets a good amount of sleep and is moderately physically active, any person who does that is by will, 100% as a matter of fact, feel much better. They will feel happier, healthier, more positive. All positive emotion will be much higher than it would be if that same person did less of any or all of those things. Right? So now the reason I was very specific about for the same person is because there's a lot of variation between people, and some people need it more than others, etc. And different people will have the same diet, exercise, and sleep and have different outcomes because we're genetically different and all of those things. But those things will make anybody's quality of life better. Any person who has goals that they're working towards, who has projects that they're working on, who is facing challenges, will be happier and more fulfilled than they would have been without those things. Matter of fact, right? So all of these things, that's because, with food, it's almost less of a consequence and more of an actual direct, it kind of in a sense it is the same thing, right? But the food literally is actually producing your body and your metabolism. That's what your body's built out of and what your body is running on. But it's the same sort of idea, right? So everybody has a purpose. And we're not here, ultimately Torah values tie into all of those things, right? But a person can, as not taking the nefesh elokis and Torah mitzvahs into account, and this obviously has to be the case because the vast majority, 99% of the world doesn't have a nefesh elokis, so isn't supposed to be keeping the Torah mitzvahs, right, and learning Torah. But everybody exists for a reason. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody is here for something. And any person at a biological level who is living the life that a human being is designed to live and doing the things a human being was put on this world to do, is going to be experiencing the natural consequences of that, the positive emotion that comes with that. Right? Now, regardless, I'm not saying that Torah mitzvahs doesn't have anything to do with this, obviously. But Torah mitzvahs aside, regardless of Torah mitzvahs, this is still true for everybody. Right? Adam la'amo yulad is true for everyone. Lo toyev ra l'sheves yitzhara is true for everyone. It's true for everyone, Jewish and non-Jewish, that Hashem wants the world to be populated. Ideally with healthy, constructive people. It's true for everyone, Jewish and non-Jewish, that Hashem created us to work. So when we're doing those things, just by virtue of being a human being, we're going to get those positive consequences because we are here to do those things. Right? So all of those things are already going to generate positive consequences, positive outcomes. And then the truth is, thinking about this now, there's even a biological analog to this, because I was going to just take it up in the next step to Torah and mitzvahs. But before we go there, right, for people, there are different levels of needs that we have, right? And you'll see things called labeled like the hierarchy of needs and things like that, right? Food and water, let's say, super basic. We really, really need those. You can't last very long without them. The reward and punishment for food and water are very strong. Hunger, thirst, extreme, very difficult to ignore, right? But not all our needs are equal. There are a lot of things that we kind of need, but not as urgently as food and water, right? Once we have food and water, and then shelter and maybe fire, to protect us if we're in a really cold environment, etc., and security and safety. And once those things are covered, then there are other needs that we have that are, we could call them maybe higher order needs. They're less urgent. We can survive without them, kind of, but life's not going to be very good. And this is where it comes to things like connection and relationship and all of these sorts of things, exercise, etc. A person can technically live a moderately long life without doing any exercise, but if they do exercise regularly, if they move, it's going to be better. A person can technically survive without connections, but life's going to be much better if they have connections and feel connected, right? And so we have a similar sort of thing then when we dive into the Nefesh Elokis. The same way that this is true of both of the body physiologically and of the Nefesh HaBahamis, the life force that makes us be a living human being as opposed to just meat. All right, and those two are very much sort of one composite entity. And each one has a role to play in all of that. Then for us, there's also the Nefesh Elokis added into the mix. And the same way that there are chemical pathways that we can trace and identify that go from physical activity, and then step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, positive emotion, right? Good food, a bunch of steps in a pathway, positive emotion, sleep, positive emotion, challenge, positive emotion, working hard, positive emotion, producing something, positive emotion, standing up to a challenge, positive emotion, all of those things. That's also true of the Nefesh Elokis. When the Nefesh Elokis is involved in doing what it's supposed to do, and it's not just the Nefesh Elokis ultimately, because our Nefesh Elokis is partnered with our Nefesh HaBahamis, which is partnered with our body. Right? They're all part of who we are. Which means that doing exercise has very powerful, moving, being active has very powerful positive natural consequences, positive emotion, etc. All of those things are true. What's equally true is, and the more that we're connected, the more connections we have in life, valuable connections, the more positive emotion we're going to have. The more that we are dedicated to the things that we should be dedicated to, the more that we are dedicated to making a dira b'tachtonim, dedicated to living our life in line with Torah as much as possible. The more that we're committed to that the natural consequence of that, it's the same rule, right? The rule is, the more we do the things that we're supposed to be doing, the more positive emotion we will experience, because it's the natural consequence that Hashem created as a motivator to do what we're supposed to be doing. It's true of sleep, it's true of food, it's true of movement, it's true of connection, it's true of relationships, it's true of Torah, it's true of mitzvahs. Same thing. The more we're committed to Hashem and what Hashem wants, the more we're dedicated to fulfilling Hashem's desire of making this world into a dira b'tachtonim, the more we're dedicated to integrating divinity, integrating the infinity of Hashem into every part of this material world, into ourselves, into our bodies, into our homes, our environments, our communities, and the world around us, the more we're dedicated and committed to those things, the more aligned our life is with who we are and with the truth, the more our life is exactly what it's supposed to be, and the more positive emotion we will feel. There's a profound, and it's counterintuitive, right? Because you don't get the same dopamine spike from Torah and mitzvahs that you get from junk food or from, scrolling on TikTok or whatever it is. Those things give you a extreme spike of dopamine. Feels really good in the moment, but that doesn't last. And when your dopamine levels go up that high, the inevitable outcome is the higher and the longer, the worse the outcome is. But the other version of this, which is when life is what it's supposed to be, We're living life the way that we're supposed to. We're dedicated to the things that we're supposed to be dedicated to L'Sheves Yitzar, to the world being populated, and to La'amal Yulad, to working hard, and to Dir B'Tachtonim, and to Torah and Mitzvahs, and all of these things to bring Mashiach. The more we're dedicated to that, yes, we don't get these crazy spikes in dopamine, but we get all of these neurotransmitters, the endorphins, and the serotonin, and the dopamine, and all of these things at exactly the right level, where it's not so much that it's, super exciting, but it's exactly where it should be, and it's sustainable, and it just becomes more and more deeply and powerfully fulfilling and rewarding over time. And so Sukkos, now coming back to the question, very interesting. Both Rosh Hashanah and Sukkos, right? So for Rosh Hashanah, there's a pasuk that says, Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'kesel yom chagenu. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. Tiku b'chodesh shofar. You should blow the shofar b'chodesh on the Yom Tov that's on Rosh Chodesh, i.e. Rosh Hashanah is only Yom Tov that's on Rosh Chodesh. B'kesel yom chagenu. Technically, the pshat is b'kesel means the allocated, the dedicated time. But Keseh in this pasuk, and if you look at Rashi on this pasuk where he says, you see, Keseh means dedicated time, and he refers elsewhere. Whatever, we don't have to go there. But Keseh here, what else does Keseh mean? Kisui, covering, concealed. Tiku b'chodesh shofar, blow the shofar on Rosh Chodesh. What's Rosh Chodesh about, right? Tamlichuni aleichem. Hashem says, I want you to appoint me as your king. Hashem is the king. Hashem doesn't need us to appoint him. But Rosh Hashanah is about the fact that Hashem does want us to appoint him. He wants it to be a mutual connection, a relationship. Hashem wants that relationship. Rosh Hashanah is about not our subjugation to Hashem. It's about our connection to Hashem, our relationship with Hashem. That's what Rosh Hashanah is about. And the outcome of that is, Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'keseh, it's concealed, l'yom chagenu. And then it comes out into the open and we celebrate it on Sukkos. Something similar that we see about Yom Kippur. It says that the schach, Pnimius HaTorah, Pi Kabbalah, the schach, the covering above the sukkah, which represents what? The Ananei HaKavod, the clouds. It says that those clouds, the schach above the sukkah, and everything we know, the incredible things we know to be true of it, Baruchnius, spiritually, that comes from the cloud of smoke of the Ketores on Yom Kippur. So on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and what was the thing that he did there that wasn't done the rest of the year? Ketores in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And he would burn Ketores, spices, incense, he would put it on coals, and it would be super hot, and it would burn up and generate this huge cloud of smoke that would go up, and then the smoke would go up, and then the covering, this sort of ceiling formed by that smoke, the product of that, or a derivative, the offspring of that, is the schach on top of the sukkah. So we see here that we have two different places where Chazal tell us that Sukkos is the outcome of Rosh Hashanah, Sukkos is the outcome of Yom Kippur. Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'kesel yom chagenu. So Tiku b'chodesh shofar, when we connect to Hashem and we, commit and renew our relationship with Hashem, the benefit of that b'keseh is concealed, kisoi, liyom chagenu, and we will celebrate it, commemorate it on Sukkos. Sorry? The outcome of that. We'll get to it. And this is everything that we've been talking about, right? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is our connection to and relationship with Hashem. Yom Kippur is about the intrinsic oneness that we have with Hashem, which is why it's Kippurim. It's a time of atonement for everything, etc. So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are about the oneness that we have with Hashem and our actual relationship with and connection to Hashem. And when we do Rosh Hashanah right, when we do Yom Kippur right, when we focus and are dedicated to and committed to our relationship with Hashem and our oneness with Hashem, and that's what we're about, the natural outcome of that is Chagenu, celebration, commemoration. You don't even have to have something to celebrate, right? When a person is living a life that's connected and has purpose and has meaning, they are going to feel a profound sense of joy, of happiness. Not jumping up and down, clapping, la 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 la, happiness and joy, but a very deep and powerful joy, happiness, fulfillment, all of these things. They don't need to have something that they're celebrating. They just exist in a state of joy and happiness because they are living the life they're supposed to live. They're connected to what they're supposed to be connected to. They're committed to what they're supposed to be committed to. And the natural consequence of living the life we're supposed to live is the most powerful and profound positive emotion. That's, in a sense and in a technical way, what positive emotion is there for. To motivate us for these things, to do these things, to reward us for these things. So the pursuit of happiness is necessarily self-defeating by definition. If I'm trying to make myself happy, I'm not focused on the things I'm supposed to be focused on. I'm not dedicated to why I'm here. I'm not dedicated to making the world a better place. I'm not dedicated to integrating the infinity of Hashem into the world and making a dir b'tachtonim, etc., and contributing to all of that. So I'm not going to get the positive emotion, the happiness that is the natural consequence of those things. The same way that a person who's chasing respect is not going to have respect, because chasing respect is the opposite of what actually causes respect. Chasing happiness is not necessarily the opposite, but it's just not the thing that naturally causes the ultimate maximum happiness. The ultimate maximum happiness is a natural consequence of living the life we're supposed to live with a purpose we're supposed to have, connected to what we're supposed to be connected to, committed and dedicated to what we're supposed to be committed and dedicated to, doing the things we're supposed to be doing. That will produce the ultimate, most profound and powerful happiness and positive emotion. And this is why Sukkos is Zman Simchaseinu. When we just had Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when we just realigned our head, we realigned our heart, we refocused our life on our connection, our relationship with Hashem, our oneness with Hashem, and all of the things that come with that, now Zman Simchaseinu. That's all you need. That generates a state. You don't need to have something to celebrate. You don't need to have something to commemorate. The outcome of that is the smoke of the Ketores on Yom Kippur forms the schach of the sukkah. Tikka b'chodesh shofet b'keseh leyom chagenu. Sukkos is zman simchaseinu. It's just unspecified joy and happiness. This joy and happiness is the natural outcome of Rosh Hashanah, the natural outcome of Yom Kippur. And here the message of Sukkos is that the ultimate joy is one that doesn't need to be commemorating or celebrating something specific. It's the natural outcome of what Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are supposed to be, which is aligning ourselves with what we're supposed to be aligned with and who we're supposed to be, doing what we're being committed to what we're supposed to be committed to, and doing what we're supposed to be doing. L'chaim v'levracha, good Yom Tov, and wishing everyone a unprecedentedly joyous Sukkos. Thank you.